Okay, so again, good morning, folks from Nairobi, the green city in the sun. I'm thrilled that you could join us today. Welcome to the Yale Bridges webinar today on the 10th day of July 2020. My name is Cephas Okoth, and I am the founder and leader at Cyber in Africa. We call ourselves the voice of Africa cybersecurity, and we are on a mission to bring, or rather take, Africa's cybersecurity to the forefront of the continental and global scenes. We do this through media, with special industry programs, events, working a lot in partnerships with cybersecurity individual companies and different organizations across Africa. In our webinar, in this webinar today, we'll consider and discuss business continuity and management. And we have with us a guest panel of two gentlemen who will address the above topic and issues that spring up during the conversation. I'll be asking them to introduce themselves in a bit. Meanwhile, please connect with us on LinkedIn in the links that I will be sharing in the chat section. Lisa, I think you can help share those links out. A bit of housekeeping quickly. Please ask your questions or seek clarifications in the chat at any point in time during the webinar. Feel free to share any information or links to knowledge resources as pertains to the topic of today, as well in the chat section. And in case of any difficulties, technical hitches on our end, during the course of this webinar, again, we ask you to be patient and stick around while we hustle to sort any hitches out. Before we get into today's agenda, in our webinar last week, we talked about security awareness training, and we considered the role of the executive, the current context of the COVID-19 crisis, and how that has impacted the security awareness programs in organizations. And then, of course, we talked about some of the practical steps that were taken or that are being taken by the guests in the last webinar. So be sure to tune in in the YouTube channel for Yale Bridges. You'll find the recording on demand for that webinar and all the other webinars we've done over the last month. Okay, so moving on, I'd like us to do a quick poll to give us a nice segue into the conversation of today. Lisa, I think you should be able to activate the poll on your end. Could you see if you can help me activate the poll on your end? Lisa? Okay. Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, 1 second, let me share my screen.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so while, all right. So, okay, so in this poll, what we're asking is if you already have a business continuity plan within your organizations. So I guess we'll be taking the poll during the course of the conversation. So stick around for that, and we'll be eager to hear your responses. So, okay, let me proceed. So let's get into today's talk. And gentlemen, please, I want you to introduce yourselves in detail. As always, I will start with our host, Steve. I would have started with our host, Steve, but Steve is not in the room yet. So I will start with you, Felix, then I'll move on to Michael. Felix?
Hello, guys. My name is Felix Atandi. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Cybertembo. Cybertembo is apparently a new company, and we're trying to get into the Kenyan as well as East Africa market on matters cybersecurity. We decided to find our own niche on how to address some of the things we've been seeing happening in the security realms. So avoiding the usual big words like penetration testing and vulnerability management, we decided to go a bit further. So the services that Cybertembo offers, we categorize them into 3 categories. We have our threat intelligence services. So our threat intelligence services is basically risk-rating a company by using data analytics or using analytic insights. So depending on your current setup for threat intelligence, we just come and integrate with the solutions, take your threat feeds and anything you have on your SIEM, then make sense out of it in a timely fashion. Also, in fact, by using artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. We also do cyber risk maturity for companies. So this is mostly if a company wants to conduct a digital transformation, or if companies already using digital services, we do a cyber risk maturity. The process begins by doing a DFA, which is basically a digital footprint assessment. The digital footprint assessment lies on the reconnaissance phase. So we scan your whole network and looking for a couple of things that will pose a threat to your company. Another service we also have is now the bespoke services, or we call them Tembo services. Now here is more it's more targeted towards the client's requirements. So this includes intelligence-led security testing. We do training and capacity building as well for cybersecurity. We also have a research and development service line, as well as anything that the client will require. So if a client will want to do a vulnerability management with us, then we'll come up with a plan to help them as well.
All right, thank you, Felix. Michael?
Michael Owino here. I work as a head of digital channels in Cotec Systems and Solutions Limited. Cotec is a fintech that provides SACCOs and microfinance institutions with the core banking systems and agency banking, mobile banking, ATM bridges, and all digital integrations that are there pertaining to the SACCO and MFI industry. So now we cover Kenya, mostly in offering these solutions. As far as Botswana is concerned, in Botswana, we are offering the whole suite of solutions under the Ministry of Cooperatives, whereby we supply all the SACCOs, the trade industries in Botswana, and the MFIs in Botswana, all of them with the same solutions. So our presence also go as far as Uganda is concerned, also in Swaziland, and we are currently getting into South Africa. I think our first product in South Africa will be going on live by 1st of August, that is next month. So that's a brief introduction of Cotec and a brief introduction of Michael.
Thank you, Mike. Yes. Thank you, Mike. Like I said, you guys are doing pretty good, so it's glad to have you here today. So
yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So let me quickly get into the topic of today, and I want to start from the basics, because again, I don't want to assume, or we don't want to assume that all of us sort of get the essence of what business continuity and management is. So, do today's companies really need a business continuity plan? And take that as a question. You know, before you even answer that question, let's answer or let's get a clarification of terminologies. In your experiences, both Felix and Michael, what is business continuity, and what makes it? And then, of course, do companies really need business continuity plan? I think those are 3 questions in one, but take it as you see fit. I'll start with Michael.
Thank you very much. So in today's companies, before we even look at whether companies need business continuity plan, it will be very prudent to understand what is business continuity management. So business continuity management outlines procedures and instructions an organization must follow in the face of a disaster. So this is whether there'll be fire, there's flood, there's bombing, there's earthquake, or mostly, interestingly, the one that we see commonly nowadays, mostly in the world, is a cyber attack. That is actually the most prevalent kind of disaster that is normally there. So we rarely get an advance notice that a disaster is ready to strike. These are things that just comes impromptu, and they come like a thief. So even with some lead time, though multiple things can go wrong. So every incident is normally unique, and it unfolds in unexpected ways. Because you find that the uniqueness might lie in terms of maybe for the IT firms or industries, there might be a cyber attack, some hacking happens within the ecosystem, or maybe a manufacturing company where the machineries can all collapse or can malfunction, or a power outage comes in and then maybe burns the entire building or all the equipments that were there into place. So that's why each and every incident is normally very unique. Now, coming back to the question is that now this is where a business continuity plan comes into play to give your organization the best shot at success during a disaster. So I think you need to put a current tested plan in the hands of all personnel responsible for carrying out any part of this plan. So the lack of this plan normally just means your organization will take longer than necessary to recover from an event or even incident. So you see, so if there's no this business continuity plan and a disaster strikes, your business could go even out of business for good, or it might take a very long time before it comes back to normal. And when that one happens, I think your clients will move to other organizations or other service providers, and your business will really take a toll in terms of coming back to where it used to be. So a business continuity plan is very, very, very much important in the companies today.
Interesting that we are talking about business continuity, and I think at the end of the day, it's, even IT systems and cybersecurity systems or programs, they're meant to power up and feed into the business goals of the organizations. Let me jump to Felix. Having a brief, with your own understanding and experience of what business continuity is. From a business systems point of view, IT resilience and particularly cybersecurity resilience is sort of a subset of business continuity planning. So where does IT or say cybersecurity resilience fit into the whole business continuity plan, you think?
Thank you, Cephas. As you correctly said, the business cybersecurity resilience is a whole thing of which business continuity planning and management is a subset of. And coming from the first question that you asked, if companies need a business continuity management or a business plan, which is an important thing. I'll address it in two ways. First, for the one that is the business risk that is associated with disaster, and for us to understand how you come into this place in the first place. In risk, and we have three layers. We have the inherent risk. We also have the control risk, and as well as the residual risk. Now, for the inherent risk, those are the risks that exist when there are no controls in place, when you've not done any controls. Then the controllable risk is the one where, after you've implemented some controls, that's what's related with. The residual risk, of which now caters for business continuity and disaster recovery, is risk that you cannot deal with, or they just happen when you've already put the controls. the importance now of having a business continuity management plan for an organization is one, for the business risk associated with it, as well as the time to recover or to get back to normal operations. And there's also a very major one from a compliance perspective. So for governance risk and compliance, jurisdictions, governments, or regulatory organizations require that organizations that they take care of do usually have a business continuity plan. And obviously, if you're not compliant, there are usually repercussions for that. Now, for a business to be, or an entity to be cyber resilient, it means that it covers every aspect of security from the beginning to the end. Business continuity is just a subset of it in the sense that it covers the planning, who is responsible for the business management plan, how is it initiated, how is it put in place, how often is it changed or assessed, and most of these things are done usually by auditors. And when you get a clear check for having all the plans in place, then it plays into a bigger role of being cyber resilient.
Interesting, you have mentioned about the risk aspect of all this, because again, I think BCM is part of the bigger enterprise risk management effort. How do you think, Felix, BCM, business continuity management, relates to the company's existing risk management efforts? And are there any differences between a typical BCM and the overall risk management?
Yes, BCM is guided by a couple of international organization rules or guidelines. So, for example, for the ISO 27001 and 2, that is part 14, I think that's for business continuity management. And also, I believe there's one for business continuity management too. I think that is 27031. Maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, of which gives the best practices for business continuity management. Now, of course, there are various other things to look at, because, as you say, being a subset of the whole governance risk and management, qualifying to have a proper business continuity plan in place with proper disaster recovery plan as well as personnel builds to the bigger picture of addressing risk.
Absolutely. Initially, you had talked about cyber resilience and how cyber resilience goes beyond cyber security, and it takes into account both the business and the technology and the process aspects, end to end. It's very interesting. Where really does BCM fall into, into the cyber resilience specifically? I don't know if I'm kind of twisting the earlier question. So looking at BCM from a cybersecurity resilience perspective. Any thoughts on that? Felix?
Oh, is that to me?
Yes.
It depends on how you really define cyber resilience. From my perspective, it's a really big word which covers a lot of things in cybersecurity. So basically, if you've done your proper risk management processes, you assessed your resources, you have a risk management plan, you have a disaster recovery management plan, you have a monitoring plan, and you also have an assessment plan or an audit plan for it as well. So basically, it means making sure the controls are there. First of all, assessing the entity or the client, making sure the controls are there, then later on coming to see how mature they are from the last time you're there. That builds up now to cyber resilience. You're cyber resilient by making sure that all the steps that guide you towards being cyber resilient, basically meaning that you're able, if something happens in a cyber security perspective to your company, that you're able to get back and maintain the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data or your client's data.
Sweet. Back to yeah, sure. I mean, I know. For one thing, I take cyber resilience as from 5 key areas. And of course, business continuity, disaster recovery it's one of the anchors of cyber resilience. But again, that's another conversation for a different section. I'd like to move on to you, Michael, and you sort of defined for us business continuity management, and you gave us pretty solid reason as to why organizations need continuity. But what can you say really is the value of business continuity planning? Because I remember at the start of the coronavirus, everyone was wondering what things are going to look like, when the pandemic strikes and the lockdown began and all that. So government had to sort of activate their business continuity programs, or plans. But Michael, what would you say really is the value of a business continuity program? And you can give us an example of your own company, Kotek.
Okay, practically you find that the values are immense. Now, it's good that you brought in the aspect of COVID. When COVID came, nobody knew that COVID could turn things upside down the way it has done today. And not everybody was ready for COVID-19. And not many organizations knew that there was something like COVID that could come and could disrupt the way their work is being handled right now. So we've seen an example from the airline industry, how even some airline companies have closed down just because of COVID. We've seen how some airline companies have laid off their staff. And it was interesting enough, at around March, April there are some airline companies who came and transitioned and started now offering cargo services. So for them to remain afloat. So meaning that at the back of their mind, instead of now closing down, it's like they had some kind of a continuity plan. Now back here, you find that like in the case of Kotek, you find that is mostly IT company, a fintech for that particular matter. And we've been handling several instances of disruptions and of incidences that have been coming into place. So let's say the aspect of business continuity plan and management has been at the core and back of our mind and part of our strategic realignment in the organization. So in the process of implementing this business continuity plan, let's say when COVID came about, it was just like a committee that could come and fall into place, sit down, then start to think, how does our business continuity plan resonate towards what is happening right now for the case of COVID-19. Now, you find that unlike most companies, a lot of their staff now could work from home to be able to mitigate the factors of contracting the virus and to bringing down the spread of COVID-19 to all other staff in the organization. Because you can imagine the impact it would have when all your staff have all been admitted having COVID-19, either in isolation wards, or maybe in quarantine or fighting for their lives, you see. So number one, there was the aspect of now battling this exposure to all the staff within the organization. Then number two is that once you've contained the virus from your staff, how again are they able to work in the organization? So now this is the aspect of now facilitating remote working environment. So in the aspect of now giving our employees a remote session, working from home, let me call it like that, that's the kind of word that's going around. So in this working from home, so how are we able to boost productivity as far as working from home is concerned? Because you find that most people have been wired in such a way that they have to be under confinement of an office for them not to work effectively. Now, this is the reason why, maybe part of the reasons is that there are some facilitation that comes from the office, and there are some items that they can only get from the office and not even at home. So in this part of mitigation factors, and in the aspect of now preparing our staff now to work remotely, what are the particular facilitation will they require for us to have that effective environment of us supporting even our clans. Then I find that our clans also, mostly like I told you that we work with the circles mostly. So not all clans have the same kind of an exposure and have also business continuity plan with them. So you find that as far as Cotec coming in to be able to mitigate its own aspects of the continuity management, we also had to go to some of our clans to assist them in this transition. You see, because our business is dependent on their business, and to them also they are having other customers that they are facilitating on the other hand. So it came in as a very much important factor to be able to prepare for this particular business continuity. So as an organization, those are the few steps that we came and took, and we had to make radical changes at the same time. And from what is going around, you find that there's some organization that comes and says that actually they are seeing like now even working from the office is not that kind of a big deal. And there are some companies who are saying that even after post-COVID, they will still be working from home or remotely for that particular matter, so that they can come and cut down on costs associated with the renting the office, running the offices. You see, because these people who are in the offices, they are consuming electricity, they are consuming internet, you're cooking tea for them, you're having a driver on standby to be able to drive them from one point to another, you know, so running costs that are associated within these people being in the office is really becoming so high. So in this aspect, as an organization, and also cutting across to the other clients that we're working with, those are the kind of mitigation factors that we came and put into place. So over to you.
Interesting. One thing has hit my mind from what you've just said, that you rely on the business operations of your clients for you to make money and survive as a business. And that brings in the element of vendor or third-party business continuity management, that your vendors or your parties need to be able to have ensured business continuity programs and things like those. But I will come to that later on. Felix, as a consultant, I want you to respond to the same question about the value of a business continuity management program to an organization. What would you advise an organization in terms of why they should implement business continuity management?
Well, apart from the previous reasons I've given, a company should have a business continuity management plan for a couple of issues. The most important one, or the main one that people usually drive them to have one, is from a compliance perspective. So first you have to do a business impact analysis, do maybe an asset inventory, know what your businesses are, your processes are, make a plan for them. Then, as we know, these disasters cannot be avoided. I mean, residual risk counts things like fires, this COVID-19. I mean, COVID-19 in itself is part of the residual risk. Nobody had premeditated, or nobody thought that people would be put away from the office or working remotely. So it basically affects the whole business processes, from staffing to their normal to the third-party integration or other third-party companies that work with them. There's also the aspect of inventory control and if it's a company like a fast consumer FCMG, how quickly can they, for example, if they take their milk from Uganda, say, I'm trying to digress from cybersecurity, but that's still considered as a risk. If they're not able to get the milk from Uganda, how quick can they satisfy the current demand for milk in the places where they sell their milk, and how quickly can they get another person? So you see, it's important for them to have a business plan in the first place, risk management plan, so that they're able to identify other sources where, in case something happens to their primary source of materials, they're able to fall back to that as quickly as possible without hurting the company. So basically, having a plan or a business continuity plan is important for that on that aspect. If you're a financial or a payment service provider, like M-Pesa, you obviously need a plan as well if anything goes. As I'm sure you've been seeing for M-Pesa, for example, it's been having almost daily maintenance at night. I'm sure they also have a business continuity plan with them. They've identified, for example, if their primary site goes down or if there's a power outage, they're able to restore services either from a warm site or a hot site, so that customers are not really affected by some of these risks that were not intended to happen. Back to you, Cephas.
Yeah, sure. And I think both of you have really explained well the value and particularly the compliance part and the earlier points that Michael had sort of alluded to when it comes to the demands of third party. What? Really?
Yes, just continue, Cephas. Can get you.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that. I think I had. All right, cool. We are good now. All right. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of demands by third parties, third party entities and vendors, for example, Cortec clients would be keen that Cortec should be having business continuity management, and this is actually etched into the contract, for example, or the proposals that Cortec should be able to declare clearly that we as a company, we've implemented business continuity plans, we have the templates, we have the team, we have the processes, we've complied and all that stuff. I think that is such an important value point when it comes to business continuity management. Michael, let me throw this on to you, and I'm not sure if you're going to like this question, but anyway, Mike, what would be the worst case scenario if your company, Cortec, does not have a business management plan? What do you think is the worst thing that could happen to you guys? Michael?
Sorry. That's interesting. Very interesting. So let me also try and put it this way. Yeah? Let's say for the case of Cortec, let me put it this way. Suppose you are running a manufacturing company, and you get a bomb blast in that particular site, and everything goes away. So you see what happens from there. It means that now you are rendered useless. There's nobody who will know to be able to answer to your customer queries. All your equipments are gone, and everything is either raised down by the fire or you are out completely. So now what comes into place is that now, how do you move when the worst case scenario applies to you? Now, let's say for like Cortec, maybe the worst case scenario I can imagine about maybe it's a cyber attack. So let's say when a cyber attack happens in our organization, how are we able to move? And how are we able to transition our customers to continue getting the services, the financial services that they need without actually, okay, here it comes to strike like a balance. This is like a catch-22 situation. You are down, but there's the demand from your customers and your clients for the services. Now, in this case, for the sake of the IT companies, it is in a situation whereby now you have your backups ready, and you have even remote sites where, suppose anything happens to your current site, you are able to run very fast to the backup site and continue operations. But also in the same place, let's take an example of maybe, like I mentioned earlier, a manufacturing company who has got to go down, maybe somewhere in industrial area, and a bomb blast, a bomb is thrown in that particular industry. How will they be able now to proceed and get over their business? Does it mean that is the worst case? Does it mean that now they close shop or what? So now this is where business continuity plan comes into place. And the questions that comes to the business continuity plan is that how do we come up with this plan? Who owns this plan? And in case of the worst case scenario, how are we able to transition from here so that when the worst happens, what does it mean? Because if you don't have that business continuity, then that means that now we are doomed. We are good to close the shop and to be able to go. Like in the earlier question that I was answering about the airline companies, you find that not airline companies closed, but there are those airline companies who are not ready enough to handle the COVID scare are the ones who closed shop. Some even sold their planes. But there are those who transitioned and were able to convert their planes into cargo planes. Even here in the country, you find that even the transport sector came very fast and transitioned. There are those who now started ferrying goods from those remote areas or from the villages into the city and vice versa, you see. So now it's just a matter of how do you handle a disaster. So it depends now with how well your business continuity plan falls into place. And just like what Felix had mentioned earlier, the compliance aspect of it is compliant enough? Has it gone through those compliance jurisdiction to make it like an effective business continuity plan? Because you say you can have a business continuity plan, but how well will it help you in terms of crisis and in terms of disaster? And in this particular case, this is now whereby people normally do like a test or like a mock of a disaster to see how ready or how well prepared are they to handle a disaster. So maybe this goes to mostly most organizations or into all organizations. You see, they normally do the fire drills in the buildings. So you find that there's normally the fire exit in case of fire. So you don't wait until that fire comes and strikes you. Then you start now looking on how to go and do the fire assembly and escape that fire. What you do is that after installing those fire equipments within your building, then you do a drill to see how we will now respond to that fire incident. Then from there, it will tell you if fire erupts in this building today, it will take us 2 minutes or 1 hour for us to evacuate everybody from all the rooms in this building. And for everybody to be able to assemble at the fire assembly point. And it will take us another maybe 30 minutes to 1 hour to count everybody to have a head count and to account for each and every person in that particular building. So this also goes to each and every organization, just the way we do this fire drill. Also, our business continuity plan also should go to a drill and we test it to see how will it come out. Are we that ready, or do we need to fasten here and there so that in the case of an incident or if in the case of a disaster, we are not caught off guard. So that now, like what you are alluding to, Cephas, that what happens? Do we now close and we go home, or do we close the company? So that we don't come to have those kind of discussions, so that we can now transition very easily. Yes, back to you, Cephas.
So, Michael, you sort of leaped forward into 2 questions that I wanted to ask. Who owns a business continuity management plan in organization? I mean, who should own it?
Okay, that's very interesting, Cephas, as to who owns the business continuity plan. Because, okay, I've seen several different organizational setups for business continuity function in the corporate environment. Let's say the ones that have a look into, and preferably even our own company. But I'll not mention names. But first one was in operations department, which was reporting to the CEO, to the chief operations officer. So I call that a classic setup. So it gives you the ability to be in one team with such functions like facilities, site administration, and others who are very important for supporting company operations. So the second one that I saw was in the IT department. So it was growing from disaster recovery, and a final stage of it, it came as an evolution, let's say, with both functions of DR, disaster recovery, and a business continuity plan, you see. So that benefited greatly from understanding of IT landscape and ability to utilize technical knowledge and skills to solve the BCP tasks. Because you see, like in these organizations, mostly IT organizations, the kind of disaster that normally comes are normally IT related. You see, you find that your backup has all gone, or maybe you've encountered a cyber attack, there's a fraud. So they're normally mostly IT related. That's why now you find that now for this one was being centralized in the IT department. Then the third one was in internal controls and operational risks. So you find that here, the organization formed an ethics or risk department. So this department is the one that now was reporting to the board at the board level, and also reporting to the senior management, the C-level staff, you see. So now for these operational risks and the ethics department that is created, so that was originally aligned with the whole operational risks for the staff and natural ability to respond to this kind of a disaster. But in all cases, of all these scenarios that I observed is that there was a virtual and an virtual BCP committees, you see. So this was that these were by the top management who was present, and BCP issues and plans were discussed, approved, and tracked. So now others call them, those are the C-level executives or the top management, because you see the implementation of the business continuity plan needs to trickle down to the rest of the, it needs to go down even to the rest of the staff. It cannot go up for that particular matter. So in implementation, it will be both sides. Now, so for the BCP function, I think we need
interesting.
to have...
There's a bit. Yes, interesting. There's a bit. Go ahead.
Yes. So there's a need of this BCP function to have the ability to report. Let's say on the reporting. Let's say in the aspect of now owning, who owns the BCP in the organization. So there's the need of, I mean, also to have the ability of the of this department that has been given the mandate of handling the BCP in this organization to report to the C-level or board level and have the understanding of business. So they must actually understand how does the business operates and end-to-end of this business. It might be maybe a fintech firm. So how does this fintech operate? Let's say like Kotek. How does Kotek operate? What are the building blocks that drives Kotek? You see, from ground up, you see. And for this matter, this committee needs to have connections and representatives in all major departments. So there must be representatives. So this committee is comprised of each and every person representing each and every department in the organizations. So that now you can have like a 360-degree view of the entire organization. So that as you come to come up with this business continuity plan, it will be very easy also now to talk about the management. You see, there's the BCP, but now the management in it also is really effective with this particular committee. Now, if these requests are met, then there is no difference actually where it should be placed originally. But my take would be it goes to a committee, and this committee to comprise of a representative from each and every department in the organization, because we cannot wholesomely say that disaster will befall the IT department only. No, the IT might be affected, yes, but also we have even other areas of this organization. We might be having the admin side of the organization. We might be having the HR side and many other areas. So for example, you find that maybe in the kitchen can blow up. You see, somebody goes and cooks something in the kitchen and it blows up. You know, that's a disaster. So what is the BCP plan for that given disaster that has happened in the kitchen that might even affect maybe some other operations, you see? So it should be a committee-led ownership that comprises of each and every representative in each department. But it has a reporting to the, depending on the organization setup. So it can have a reporting to the board, depending on that organization setup, or it can have a reporting to the C-level executives within that organization.
And talking of C-level, I know for sure one thing that that has to be is that there has to be a C-level champion for BCP programs, and to ensure that the voice of the BCP, whether it's the committee or operational department, their voice and their influence needs to be felt in the C-suite and of course in the board. Coming to you, Felix, with the vast experience that you have, and of course servicing clients and working with different partners of yours, how do you think an effective BCM capability should be developed? What are the steps, or what are the things that should be put in place for an organization to have an effective BCP capability?
Sorry, just before I answer that, just to plug in on what Michael was saying. Personally believe the board of governors is accountable for having a business continuity plan, because I look at it from a compliance perspective. When an audit comes, I'll just have a specific couple of questions I will ask. So on matters regarding your business continuity management issues, do you have a plan in the first place? If you don't have, then there are issues there. The second one will be how and when the plans were created, of which must be documented. All plans should be documented. Do the plans have the necessary steps for business continuity and disaster recovery? And then also in the disaster recovery plan, there's also roles for everybody. Does everybody know their role, like first responders? And if there's a fire, how to go about it? And also, if you have a plan, how is it often reviewed? And when is it reviewed? And then also, lastly, also is when, who, how, and when the plans are tested. So for example, having the drills and everything to just confirm that the BCM is in order and it's fully working. So on your question, developing an effective business continuity management plan, I'll break it into a couple of steps. So for the initial step, I think you'll have to have an initial assessment and objective setting. So you establish and communicate to C-suite level teams. As part of coming up with a business continuity plan, there also has to be a business continuity team on it. And Michael has aptly really put it, having everybody included in coming up with a plan. So you have the HR. So the BCP committee technically should have HR representative, an IT representative, maybe the CRM or stock control representative, and the C-suite also. So either CSO or CIO, as well as the users. You can always, to get the functional requirements put in place, you can also engage some users, maybe using questionnaires or something when you come up with the plans and on probably some of the things that they would require be implemented in it. After establishing and communicating with the senior C-suite guys, you can outline and ensure the steps, some steps are followed. So identifying critical processes in your company, doing a business impact analysis, and also how to respond and approach disasters using the disaster recovery plan, as well as monitoring, testing, and improving the plans, which is usually a recursive thing. So basically, just having a plan in place is not enough. The plan has to be tested, monitored, and also after audit, they can be improved to see where the gaps are. So basically, just to go back to what I said, you have to identify the team in charge of the project, and that everybody knows their roles in the disaster recovery or plan, as well as the business continuity management plan. So review the existing plans if they have any to the disaster recovery and planning. If they don't have, then you can come up with new policies or new plans. Also identify existing external laws or regulations, say for example in Kenya, for payment service providers using the CBK guidance note for 20, I think the latest one is 2018, for August 2018. And then also requirements maybe by communications authority or the government itself, or even regulators who are in charge of risk. Then finally, you can draft and approve a formal business continuity plan policy that outlines the objectives of the business and also the processes that went into building it up. I think that's it.
Then also Cephas,
Yes.
if you can allow me just to add on the interesting part that Felix has left from. Let's say your organization might not be having a BCP or a business continuity plan in place. So now, in terms of developing an effective BCM capabilities, let's say for the cases of the guys who don't have maybe a business plan in place, or if you tend to review yours, so maybe you'll start by assessing your business processes. So what are your business processes? What are the business functions? What do they take? And then determining which areas are vulnerable. Because also you'll find that in every business, you normally have got those sensitive areas that if they are touched, then you are either out of business or you either inconvenience your customers. So you can go then surround those particular areas. Then you can say that these are our vulnerable areas. And also at the same time, you look at the potential losses. If the processes go down for even a day, leave alone even, or maybe a few days or a week, depending on the nature of business. So if you look at the potential losses, for example, let's say like a fintech, let's say if you go down for a day, what does that translate to? To your customers, to you as an organization, and let's say everything in totality. So those are the kind of areas that should be focused, let's say when you are trying to look at a business, to put a business plan into place. So this is essentially, this essentially can look maybe into these following steps that can be looked at when coming up with this kind of a business continuity plan, given consideration of those particular areas that you focus on, just to make it to be so minute. Because you see, when you start talking about a business continuity plan, somebody can start looking at it from a broader perspective, but yet you see these things can be broken down so that you narrow down your scope, so that at least you can have manageable key milestones that you can be able to work on. So number one, I think you can identify the scope of the plan. So in identifying the scope of the plan, then now those are the areas that I talked about. You look at the vulnerable areas, you look at the potential losses, you look at how long should we transition when we start now going into the next phase. Then again, also you identify also the key business areas. So identifying the key business areas, the organization might be doing several businesses in the entire ecosystem, but there are those key business areas that should not go down even by a day or even by an hour. So then you come and then you focus on those particular areas. So once you are done with those sensitive areas, then you can now start looking at the broader picture of the business continuity plan in the entire organization. Then at the same time, you can identify dependencies between various business areas and functions. So by dependencies, I mean that if let's say like Cortec goes down right now, who are the dependencies that I will need for me to come back to business, or who will be affected? In this case, let's say like Cortec does integrations with several partners, banks, Safaricom and telecos, and the microfinance institutions. So those are the dependencies. So now in a business continuity plan, you need to identify the dependencies, who surrounds your business, so that you can now be able to come up and develop that effective BCM. Now also, you need to determine acceptable downtime for each critical function. By acceptable, I mean that what is the period that can be accepted by your clients, your customers, or by the business itself. Let's say like, can we go down for 1 hour? Is 1 hour okay? Or is 2 hours okay? Or can 1 day be that okay? So that as you work with those agreeable timelines that can be okayed and that can be accepted by your dependencies, then you can now start working around in between here. What are the steps that you need to take? Then you can create a plan to maintain operations. So let's say the plan in terms of maintaining operations will be such a way that, let's say something has happened, or maybe the building has been blown off, or maybe there's the fire in a building and everybody has been evacuated. Can your call center team go to another location and start picking calls from that other remote location so that the business can continue? So now, can operations still continue? Can people still go and serve clients even as far as your physical location is compromised? So now that's the plan that now needs to be put into place. Now, so one common business continuity planning tool is normally a checklist that includes even supplies, equipment, locations, and even locations of data backups. You see, primarily, let's say like your primary center has been compromised. Which is the next location of your backups, and is it somewhere that somebody can fly in, or can walk in, or can be driven there, even if suppose your IT staff needs to work in that particular place? So now, where the plan is available, and who should have it, and a contact information for emergency responders, because you see this plan will be under custody of somebody, or will be under custody of a given office. So in case this disaster happens, who is this contact person? Can we get his contact number and call him immediately to give us this? Or is this plan somewhere that somebody can just maybe to log in and maybe put some credentials and then retrieve it? So those things need to be clear. And also under contact information for emergency responders. So in this case, emergency responders can be maybe in case of a fire blowing into a building, the firefighters to bring the fire engines. And in case of an organization, let's say like Kotek, it will be who are our managed security service provider, who we can call very fast in case maybe of a cyber attack or something like that. So those are emergency responders whom we call straight away, and then they tell us now the next steps to take, or who can come there very fast and assist us in terms of mitigating these particular risks. And also, you might even be having backup sites. So you also need the emergency contact of the backup site providers, because you will have to call them very fast so that they cannot be able to bring you back into business. Then also, you should remember that the disaster recovery plan is also part of the business continuity plan, you see. So once a disaster happens, the same plan should dictate to you on how should you continue in your business and how should you get picked up. So developing a DR plan, if you don't have already, you should actually start doing that process right now. And if you already have a disaster recovery plan, so don't assume that all requirements have been factored in. So you just need to be able to check and be sure that it aligns with the business expectations. So I think that's my addition to Felix. Over to you, Cephas.
Yeah, and you've really, both of you have really given detailed steps. I think you've covered probably 3 or 4 steps, across what you have said. And absolutely, if you have a business continuity plan, don't just check it, as Michael has said, test it, do drills, try them out. I know over this period of COVID-19, there has been a lot of conversations, webinars and conference talks around business continuity. And one of the biggest questions has always been, were we ready? What could you have done for us to be ready, So it's important that you actually test those out and do exercises and drills going forward. I know Steve is in the room and I want to loop him in a bit. Steve, you can hear me, please unmute yourself. I want to bring you in from the, maybe you can do a quick introduction, then I want to bring you in from the perspective of third-party, business continuity management. And I know one of the big values or big drivers for business continuity is insurance coverage, okay? From analysis phase to strategy phase, business continuity management sort of increases your ability of the organization to transfer information. What do you have to say about that, Steve? Steve, can you hear me? Steve? Okay. Yeah, when you're ready, just give me a heads up. So, all right. Michael and Felix, probably as a closing to this webinar, what do you think are the success factors when it comes to business continuity programs? Typically, what should BCP officers and BCP managers and whoever is involved, what should they be looking out for? What should they be measuring? You know, what should be the deliverables of effective business continuity programs? Michael and Felix. Let me start with Felix.
Just repeat your question again so that I can use it. Sorry for that.
Okay, yeah. So I just want you to tell us, you know, from your experience, what are some of the success factors to a business continuity program in terms of what should be measured, what should be the metrics, how should they look like, you know, and what should be the deliverables of effective BCP programs?
Let me see, how can I approach this? So to have an effective business continuity management plan, first of all, as just Michael said, you have to have your disaster recovery plan first. And having the disaster recovery plan with all the important functionalities that Michael explained is goes a long way. So first of all, before you choose a business continuity planning framework, you must decide the site for processing your contingency in case you have a problem. So you can either have a mutual aid agreement, say for example, government entities that use the same similar computers, operating systems, as well as services. But also it has a downturn onto it as well, as much as it is cheap. For the same reason as third-party risk assessment as well. You might be having a proper risk assessment or risk management assessment for your company, but the company that you've had to do your business continuity as an alternative site does not have a proper one in place. So choosing a proper site processing continuous is very important. So you can either do mutual aid agreements, as I said, for governments. You can also do subscription services. So there you have to decide if you're going to have a hot site, a warm site, or cold site, or you can also do your own rolling backups. So basically, when you come up with a plan, you technically have to have the three ways. You must have an immediate, short-term, and also a long-term plan on how to go about it. And as part of the risk analysis also, after you identify your assets, business processes, threats, and also risks that are attached to them, you should prioritize your application. So for example, if you're a company like a fintech company and you also have a couple of applications, you must be able to classify them and prioritize them so that you're able to minimize on costs as well as minimize on impact or business downtime. So you can divide it into essential service, application services which are important for the daily running of the business. Then you can classify another one to which you can tolerate delays, say for example short-term delays. So here we talk about batch processing. So if there's an application that usually comes in or kicks in maybe after 2 or 3 days, then you can classify it as a tolerable delay. Also, this comes from the initial assessment on how much time do you need to get your services back. Then you can also have a discretionary, the last one is discretionary. Here we talk about long-term backup. Say, for example, if you need to keep logs, for example, as a part of compliance by the government, and they need them for say 6 months. You can get back those backups as a discretionary application. So it takes 2 to 6 months. So classifying your software applications also is very important as you come up with your business continuity management plan. Then For when you have the business plans, when you have the disaster recovery plan as well as the business continuity plans, we said there must be testing, maintenance, and assessments. There are various ways to go about it. As one of them, Michael said, is through using checklists or walkthroughs. So say a designated manager or an individual will inspect the plans, then check on the list what's there, what is not, so that they can get the gap by looking at all the stages of the plan. You can go the checklist way. You can also do the parallel way of testing, maintenance, and assessing. Here, you do the full test of the plan with all the personnel, but work continues. Say you don't have to shut down the company. And then the last one, for testing, maintenance, and assessing, you can also do the full interruption testing and assessing. So here, you do a full test according to the plans you have, the ERP and the BCP, where all the personnel are involved and normal work stops. So you also have to balance in between. So you decide if you want to go the checklist way, where somebody just goes and checklists it. It could be covert, say an auditor doing it and is not the employees or the people in the company don't know. It can be overt, where everybody knows. This is usual, like the June testings. Somebody's going to do the checklist or vouch if they've already done the checklist. Decide if you want to do it parallel, which is a full test with all the personnel, but halfway work continues, or if you really need to see what happens when everything is done, you can stop the work, then do full interruption, test with all the personnel, testing, maintenance, and assessments. And obviously, the rule of the thumb, all plans must be documented. I guess that's it for now.
Yes. Any thoughts, Michael?
Very interesting thoughts from Felix. So your question was, what are some success factors to a business continuity program? So the success factors, I'm looking at it in this way, yeah? That one way to ensure your plan is not successful is to adopt a casual attitude towards its importance. Because many organizations, after you've done for them the business continuity plan, I think it's normally stored somewhere, and nobody remembers where it is. Everybody forgets about it. So that casual attitude is one way that normally will make your plan not to be successful. It can be a very powerful plan, drafted very well indeed by the best person. You see, best thoughts inside there. But if it's handled casually, then it will not be successful. Now, every business continuity plan must be supported from the top down. You see, that means that the senior management must be represented when creating and updating the plan. So no one can delegate that responsibility to subordinates. That now, you see, okay, most managers normally like the attitude of delegation. Delegation. So you find that even maybe in coming up with the business continuity plan, you go delegate to a subordinate, and that one will make the adoption from the top coming down to be a problematic case. So in addition, the plan is likely to remain fresh and viable if senior management makes it a priority by dedicating time for adequate review and testing. So now, apart from the casual attitude of having the business plan, going further is that this business continuity plan should always be reviewed adequately and continuously, and should be tested also continuously, just to make sure that it becomes effective. Because you find that sometimes business might change, sometimes areas of interest also might change, and in that particular change scenario, and also you'll find that even management might change. There are a lot of things that might change. Even the business landscape might also change, you see. Now, in that aspect, that means that now this business continuity plan must always be in review and must always be reviewed continuously to be able to accommodate this kind of changing scenarios. Then also, management is also very key to promoting user awareness, because if employees don't know about the plan, then how will they be able to react appropriately when every minute counts, you see? So you find that most of organizations, we normally have got the tendency of now, you see, these kind of critical items, we store them with management. So management goes there, discusses about the BCP. Once management discusses, then you see thumbs up and all that. But now there's no trickle down approach. Nobody is going there to be able to create awareness, to promote awareness to the subordinates and to the entire employees within the organization. So staff needs to be involved in the day-to-day running of this particular BCP because they are part of it. Because now you see, if in case of a disaster where every minute counts, you will need the involvement of everybody that you have in place to be able to come in and assist. But the involvement of these people that you want there, they must be well aware of what needs to be done, what needs to take place, where, when, and in what particular scenario in place, you see. So that's why now it has to go to take like a trickle-down approach. Then maybe although plan distribution and training can be conducted by business unit managers or the HR staff, so you can have someone from the top kick off the training and punctuate its significance. Now, normally you find that when this significance is brought about by let's say somebody like the CEO or maybe the board chairman. If he now comes and then talks to the employees or to the staff and gives the importance of the BCP program, then I think this one now will have very great success factor when it comes now to the continuity of the program, so that now it can be felt and it can be taken seriously by everybody within the ecosystem, because it will even have a much greater impact on all employees and even giving the plan more credibility and urgency. So now these are the short areas I'd like maybe to emphasize on, to add on to Felix, that actually will make this program to become a success. So those are the small indicators that can come into place. So it's really key for us to have the top executives actually drumming up support and trickling it down to the entire staff, creating that user awareness. So the awareness must be there. And normally when you go to dependencies, you see, maybe let's take an example of maybe Cortec. Maybe we have dependencies with other people. We have circles involved. We have partners, maybe banks involved, and other bodies might be also involved. So now, as we are creating our own BCP plan, and as we want to make it to become a success, mostly when that disaster or when that time comes, we'll need also for our partners to be well aware. So we want to conduct that awareness to them so that they know that in case ABCD happens, how are we able to transition with you on board, you see? And how are we able to carry on with our services, you see? So them being aware, if in case anything happens, then they hear this thing has happened or they are called that this one has happened, then quickly at the back of their mind, they know that now this is the time for us to do what? To switch off from this one to this other place, you see, so that it can now be able to shorten the time frame that it takes for the transition. So over to you, Cephas.
Interesting. One point you talked, probably 2 points. Yes, Felix.
Just to plug in on something I think the originally said and wasn't really sure about it, but it still answers your question. If you really want to go the standardized way for code of practice, I think you'll refer to ISO 27031. I think that's the right one, yeah. For ICT Continuity Management Code of Practice, it basically looks at ICT readiness for business continuity and works on a plan, do, check, and act process. So the 4 parts, which is you plan, you do, you check, then you act. So basically, in your company, if you've already done the business impact analysis, then for the plan part, you develop now the requirements, understand the critical ICT services, and then develop the policies, identify performance gaps, and any other documentation that you need. That's for the plan part. Then for the do, you now document the processes as well, implement those strategies, and what Michael was saying, execute training and awareness activities. That's for the do. Then the second last part is now the check. The check, you can divide it into two categories. Now there's for the ongoing and also for annual reviews. For ongoing checks, you can monitor, detect, and analyze the threats that are still consistent to your company, as well as measure the plans against those threats. For the annual reviews, is just to test and exercise the plans at the end of the year or at the end of the financial year, or when the regulator says it, then review and audit either by an internal or external auditor. Then the last part, which is the act part, is now where for the management now comes in. That's why we've been insisting that management is involved in this whole process. So the management is able to review the whole program and then direct improvements on anything that comes up with it. Then the cycle continues. If you follow that plan, do, check, and act process, which is very well documented in ISO 27031, then I think you'll be doing the best code of practice and have the best plan, which is workable.
And talking of senior management and board, someone has commented here in the chat that CBK's, this is MK, CBK's prudential guidelines, the responsibility of business continuity management ultimately rests with the board of directors and senior management. Guidelines to the insurance industry on the BCP by the insurance regulatory authority directs that the board remains responsible for BCP. I think these two statements really speak to what both of you have mentioned, because the buck stops with the board and the buck stops with the senior management. So there's two questions here from experience. Does the board understand the critical need for BCMs? Michael can take that, and then Felix, you can take have boards sprung to actions as fast as required during this pandemic? So Michael, from your own experience, do you think the board understands the critical need for BCM, and how do you convince them?
Yes, Cephas. So very, very interesting from that one. Yes, from whatever I was alluding to is that from my initial statement was that actually the board should be at the front line of being in this committee, drumming up support for the BCM and making sure that it's adopted by everybody within the organization. And also we find that when the board comes in and have everybody sit down into a common room and emphasizes on the BCM, you know, it will be taken with a lot of seriousness and criticality by all the staff. So that's why you find that board coming into place, they really play a very effective role. But not only in that, because the role that the board comes and play also is that of the facilitation. Suppose something happens, because you see, the board is the one that can call the shots very fast. They're the ones who can make the key decisions very fast in terms of continuity, in terms of where adjustments to be done and all that. So they're the anchor into or at the center of all these. Now from MK's question, where from experience does the board understand the critical need for BCMs? Okay, some boards do understand, but not majority of them, you see, unfortunately. But I think some of us are coming to an environment whereby we don't actually care much whenever a disaster happens, or we have never been visited by a very huge disaster that actually brought us into a thinking room and saying that, how do we proceed from here? So I think to the boards that have got this thing rolling and running, these are the kind of boards that have been visited, you see, by disaster, and has brought them into a room whereby they've been able to ask themselves, what's the way forward? How do we prevent this from not happening again? But there are those boards whereby you find that nothing has happened to them, they don't take it seriously, and they don't see actually the urgency and the need of it, because we find that actually the reason why is that this BCM, it is not just a piece of paper, and it is not just a point of guidelines and regulations. You'll find that there are some investments that will have to be made. You'll find that there are some investments that will have to be made here, you see. Now, these investments is either the cost of the investment might make the board to be so uncomfortable, because you find that you might want to have a disaster recovery site, you might want to have a hot site or a backup site somewhere, and you might even need to be, to replicate your services to another given remote location, or you might want to have another storage, or you might want to have, so you'll find that the investment might be big when it comes now to coming up with this business continuity management plan. So that's why you find that some boards normally come and shy away. Then there are those who might approach it from the aspect of ignorance, maybe how they are being advised might also be another aspect altogether. So you find that there's the C-level executives who are in those particular organizations, or let's say the senior management, who maybe can bring in the interest of like Akina Steve here, and Felix, and maybe you, Cephas, to come and enlighten the board, to come and talk to the board. You see, there's this aspect of user awareness, you see. So if the board can be made aware, and they can be taken through the process of a disaster happening. And you see, in this case, to be able now to communicate to the board is you highlight an area that is of a very big risk to them. You take a sensitive area in that particular organization, then ask the board that suppose this area goes down, or suppose this area is affected, even for 1 hour, what will you do as an organization? Does it mean that we'll close shop? Does it mean that now we will lose all our customers? So what will it translate in the organization? So I think when you ask the board those difficult questions and those straightforward questions, then it will bring them into thinking. And in that aspect of thinking, I think they'll come to embrace the BCM. But also now, to those who are so scared about the financial implication, they should not look at that particular financial implication. They should see themselves actually bouncing back after a disaster has happened. So back to you, Cephas.
Yeah, interesting. So, Felix, any thoughts? As well, you can address the second question there. You can address the second question there that asks if boards have sprung to actions, as fast as required during the pandemic.
So for the first question that Mike has been answering, do companies view a BCM plan as something that is essential? Coming from an audit perspective or from a compliance perspective, it is not you to decide if it's important, but when you have the auditors or the regulatory people at your door, then that's when people know that these things are important. But back to the very serious aspect that has been discussed before for training and awareness, there's a really big gap between board C-suite members who understand IT as well as risk. And there's actually a lot of training and awareness that needs to be done to these people. One way is also having a CISO at board level. So try to demarcate IT services from cybersecurity services, as well as trying to demarcate cyber risk as well as enterprise risk. Because sometimes also when you go to some of these clients, there's usually some infighting on who's boss. So you find that if, say, for example, risk has been put under IT, there's obviously there's something left to give in later on when the auditors come in or when they try to get the compliance reports from them. So the board level has to be really trained on the importance of having a good business continuity management plan or disaster recovery plan. Personally, in my capacity, we've been trying to do some of these things. So hopefully some of these WebExes go a long way. I hope some people in this panel are C-suite guys, hopefully, and they can also take back the information that we give them here to their peers, as well as the whole enterprise training and awareness as well, so that everybody in the company appreciates the importance of having a proper framework for disaster recovery and business continuity. And the second question, which one is it, Cephas? Just direct me to it, please.
Yeah, there was a question about whether boards have sprung to action as fast as required during this pandemic. Do you think boards have really taken action as they should?
Yes, yes. Most of the boards have taken action on this, and it's a bit sad that they've taken these instructions from a point of fear. So obviously, for compliance purposes, somebody thinks that if they don't comply with it, then the business is at risk. Instead of approaching it from a perspective of that it's important to the business, that you don't really have to put business continuity or cyber risk or enterprise risk as a resource center, but rather than an asset. So the return on investment, if you set aside some money, for example, say to come up with proper policies or frameworks for these documents, or for disaster recovery and business continuity, or any other cyber-related thing, usually the finance people or the CFO will want to see a return on investment. Say, for example, if they commit, say, a certain amount of money, say 20 million in a year, they'd want to see a return on that. And for risk, it's really hard to quantify the returns on that, unless, say, for example, a disaster strikes you and you're able to get back to your feet and your business processes are not really affected. That's when now you can feel the return on it. But financially, there's no really return on investment for most of these services. And board members must be made to understand this. So for the payment service providers, yeah, I can assure you they've really worked on this. The big guys, the big players, tier 1 and tier 2 banks, or mobile network operators who offer financial services have been having these plans before, but for the SACCOs and small and medium enterprises, they still have some way to go, and hopefully we'll plug in that vacuum for them.
Yeah, hopefully so. So one last one for you, Michael. Ed K here had shared something saying, given Cortec offers core services to SACCOs and SMEs, would you mind sharing your overall cybersecurity maturity level of, all right, fine. Let me just read it as it is. So given Cortec offers core services to SACCOs and SMEs, would you mind sharing the overall cybersecurity maturity level of these organizations? I think he's referring to the SACCOs and SMEs. And are they cyber reliant?
Resilient.
Oh, yes, resilient. Michael?
Yes, Rivers. So what I can say is that being that we are working with these financial institutions and the SMEs for that matter, okay, not all of them are cyber resilient. And to feel that are cyber resilient, I think they're quite a handful. The remaining ones, as Cortec, we've taken that responsibility of walking the journey with them. So in this particular case, we find that we get partnerships with the cybersecurity firms, whereby we are able now to introduce them to these particular organizations, sensitize them. And in this sensitization, you find that, okay, there are those that are stalling because of some decision making within the organizations. There are those that are stalling because of you see somebody saying that the money I'm investing in this thing, it is like I'm throwing it to waste. You see, I'm not getting anything in return. So now, just like what Felix was saying, is that now just changing the mindset of some of these particular management and the board in these particular institutions. So what I can say is that a good number of them are responding well. But to them who are not responding well, we are actually in that particular phase of onboarding them into having cybersecurity resilience within the organizations. And for Cortec, I think we are miles ahead. We've taken a lot of strides and steps in this particular work. Cortec, we have managed security services, which is procured, and managed security services. We have BCP as part of it, and including of other cyber security frameworks that is that particular package. So, and then you find that in this journey, you can never say that now you are fully settled, because every day these things keep on changing, and every day new trends keep on emerging, and every day new regulations keep on coming on board. So you have actually to be walking that path on a daily basis and to be able to be keeping at pace. So as Cortec, we're in that journey, and we've gone those many miles ahead. And what we are doing is that some of our services that we've procured from our managed security provider, we are extending them to our clients who are the SACCOs and those SMEs. So like we'll find that there are those who doesn't have the capacity. You see, because here also sometimes you have to understand that there are some businesses that are struggling, let's say, or there are some businesses who don't even have that budget to facilitate those particular business continuity plans. And there are those particular businesses that are just coming up. So now, in this particular case, instead of now, because they are our clients, and instead of now seeing them going down, we actually bring them on board and we extend our services to them at no cost, or at the particular cost that we shall have agreed with them that doesn't actually come and be able to cause a dent in the operations. So this comes on a mutual agreement on the best way forward. Some of them we just do for them for free, and from a managed security provider, we extend to them, and they get to enjoy these particular services. Then you find that to some businesses, we come to advise them that they come to onboard the cloud services from Kotek, the SAS, the software as a service products, which now Kotek has taken the mandate of coming up with these kind of practices that governs business continuity plans and cyber resilience activities and plans for that matter. So we don't let them now to run these operations. We don't let them now host these services in their premises. We don't actually allow them to continue that far, but we now give them this software as a service platform that now is that secured and has got those mitigation factors in place. So I think it's a broad perspective, and in this spectrum, what I'd say is that yes, we are there, and however much others are disadvantaged, we go out of our way to look at on how are we able now to facilitate them. We don't just leave you just because now you are challenged one or the other, but we come and accommodate you, because not all businesses are the same. Not all businesses are bringing in equal amount of money. Yeah.
For a moment there, I thought, Michael, that Kotek is officially offering cybersecurity as a service. But it's good to know that you're actually extending your procured services to your clients. That's a fantastic thing. Felix, give us your parting shot.
We need solutions from some of these small companies to offer cyber resilient services as well as business continuity services. In my experience, I found that when you combine most of these solutions or services that you can offer to a client, it becomes easier than now for them to have a cyber resilient framework. So basically, if you're going to advise a client, you're going to do the advisory part, then you do the implementation part as well as the management. Therefore, somebody is able now to have an overall picture of the client. So basically, from the first part when you do the cyber strategy, you come up with a strategy or a transformation guideline or assessment. Then you go to securing them. After doing the business impact analysis, then be vigilant on those threats and vulnerabilities as well. So either having a SOC as a managed service or just having threat intelligence reports. Then the resilience part is now where the core matter of it is, and cyber incident response falls under cyber resilience. In Cyber Tembo, we are coming up with a program that we're going to offer with you people or anybody else who will be very interested in the coming month, and on how to go about the same. But probably I would ask a question or maybe a discussion to go about it. There was already something that was brought up by the Competition and Market Authority for the UK on how auditing is done. Say, for example, the big four, that is PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and KPMG. There was an article, I think, the other day that was telling them to separate their services. So, for example, having audit as a unit by itself, it's hard. I think the process started a long time, 2018 or so. It has taken some time to come to a conclusion, but I think they did come to a conclusion that they decided to separate audit practice from other practices, because you see. Usually what happens, say, for example, you hire one of the big four, they come do for you audit services. Either it could be tax or insurance related or cyber risk. They use those audits as a gateway to provide you other services. So, for example, if they do an audit on a company, on an assessment or a cyber strategy assessment on a company, And then after finding out what the posturing of the company is, they will maybe sometimes do a lenient report to the client so that they're able to offer other services, or just to stay in good books because they already offer other services to the same client. So usually there's a very thin line there. That's why you find some of these big corporations have been falling, and yet they've been audited by some of these big companies. Locally, I'd say maybe Nakumatt is one example, and some of these other fast consumer goods companies, or FCMGs. Internationally as well, I think some of them have broken down. Some of the big companies, especially in retail, have fallen or have gone bankrupt, and yet they've been serving services, audit as well as other services from the big four. I don't know what you guys think about this. Maybe it's a discussion for next time, or you can finish it now.
Yes, that's a discussion for another time, Felix. but a good point you mentioned. I've had sort of the same conversation from some buddies of mine in the US, and they're asking, in the cybersecurity industry locally here, do we have the big players, the cops, subcontracting their work to companies like yours, for example, Cyber Tembo and Yelbridges and others? Is it a practice that is standard? Is it a practice that is common? So some of those questions are really good things to talk about, and I'm taking that under consideration. We'll definitely have a conversation around that. Michael, your parting shot?
Thank you, Cephas. Just briefly, my parting shot, actually, time is far much spent. I do not actually dwell more. So this is just like to give like an emphasis. I just want to give an emphasis on BCP, because most people normally think that restoration of IT infrastructure and operations is the actual BCP, and therefore recommend that it should be part of the IT department, you see. So, but disaster recovery is only one part of the plan and helps resolve the disruption, you see. So BCP actually is normally more holistic and considers all areas of a business, including dealing functions like content approval, you have purchase requests, you're handling account receivables, and so this part of BCP is what normally helps operation continues, normally through the disruption. So you find that sometimes, let's say like in this case of COVID, you find that HRs actually must have plans on whether to allow employees to work from home or from an alternate location. The accounts department should also plan on how they will handle cash, to handle cash flows in the event of a disaster. So you find that the BCP spans an entire organization, and it's important also to include the plans at both organizational and department levels. So let's say like if we come up now with this framework, we go into each and every department so that it doesn't become like a sole responsibility of IT, like most organizations normally try to allude to. They normally tend to focus more on IT than on other areas of the organization. So each department must be part and partisan of the BCP plan. So that's my parting shot. Cephas?
Yes. So I think one common attitude that IT and particularly security people always have is that they feel they're the most important people in the organization. So, but in real sense, IT and security is just a small part, and they are both enabling departments. So thank you so much, Felix. Thank you, Michael, for your insights, your time, and your presence in this webinar. Thanks to our audience for coming around, sticking with us for the last hour and I think 45 minutes. We appreciate your thoughts, your feedback in the chat section, and your comments as well. Our next webinar will be taking place next week. Same time, same place. That is on the July 17th. And we'll be discussing women in leadership, particularly I'll be keen personally on cybersecurity leadership. So tune in. We'll be having women panel here. We've been accused a lot that we bring a lot of men here. No offense, Felix and Michael. But next week we hope to have a women panel, and it's going to be very insightful. So stay tuned for more information on social media and on your email. My parting shot is that hope you've learned something, even if it is just one thing. Hopefully we've learned one thing that you can apply immediately. Hope we've learned several things that you can take back to organizations and our peers and our teams and convince them of why BCP, ECP, and BSM is important, and how you can go about either starting or improving our BCM capabilities. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to Yelbridges. From my end, thank you. And I hope to see you next week. Lisa?
Thank you, Cephas, and to the panelists as well. To the participants, thank you for joining into our sessions. Feel free to get in touch with us. If you want to reach out to us with whatever service or question, you can write to us on our website, and we'll be sure to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good weekend, everyone.